He is a poor boy who is looked down upon by others. By chance, he finds out that he has several uncles involved in the mafia, and from there, he starts to rise to the peak of his life. These uncles, who either drive him around to enjoy the breeze or take him to the beach to surf, also teach him how to use force to regain his dignity if anyone annoys him, handing him a gun and showing him how to use it.
How'd that feel?
Not long before, the protagonist Joshua's mother died of a drug overdose in their home. He didn't cry or cause a scene, seemingly having known that his mother would meet such an end, though he couldn't prevent it. Afterward, he called his grandmother, whom he hadn't seen in 11 years.
Mom OD'd. She died.
Soon after, his grandmother Janine drove him to her mansion, where luxury cars lined the driveway, and cash was scattered around the house. Joshua's uncles, noticing his hesitancy, asked a few questions and set up a room for him. Barry, noticing Joshua's worn-out shoes, pulled out a wad of cash and told him to fix up his appearance, teasing him not to choose the color orange, saying it made him look gay. Later, the uncles complained to their mother, saying they didn't like Joshua's presence. They didn't trust this nephew they hadn't seen in years and were concerned that his presence might affect their upcoming jewelry store heist. It turns out Joshua's grandmother, along with her sons, had established the most notorious crime family in the area, nicknamed She-Trum. Even though she knew bringing Joshua here wasn't ideal, as he was her grandson and she couldn't bring herself to kick him out after his mother's death, she firmly stood her ground and warned her sons. "If I want him to stay, he stays. If anyone disagrees, after this job, you won't get a penny, not a single dime." Faced with Janine's firm stance, they reluctantly agreed to respect her decision. To help Joshua quickly integrate into the Cody family, Janine hosted a welcoming party. Joshua's uncles also respected Janine and had everyone chant his name, encouraging him to jump over a fire and into the pool, completing the family initiation ritual. Joshua had lived a quiet life for decades, but faced with his uncle's wild lifestyle, he couldn't adapt. He retreated to his room, where he coincidentally ran into his uncle Andrew, who had just returned from prison.
Who's Jay? I'm Josh.
After Joshua introduced himself as Andrew's nephew, Andrew seemed to take an instant dislike to him. Just then, Janine arrived to find Joshua, and upon seeing Andrew, she froze for a moment.
You just ruined my surprise.
In the living room, facing Andrew's sudden return, the atmosphere was incredibly tense. Craig wanted to crack a joke, but was stopped by Barry's glance, as if declaring ownership, since Andrew was the most capable one in the Cody family. During the time Andrew was in prison, Janine had placed a lot of trust in Barry, giving him control over both major and minor affairs in the household. Barry feared that Andrew's return would affect his standing in Janine's eyes. Given the complex family dynamics, Joshua felt a bit uncomfortable. He made up an excuse and rode his bike out of the house to his girlfriend's place. He didn't return until evening when Andrew, sitting in the living room, called Joshua to stop and said that he and his mother were twins. If Joshua felt sad or scared about his mother's death, he could sit and talk with him. After saying that, Andrew continued watching TV. The next morning, Joshua dressed up properly to see his mother off. The neighbors who attended the funeral knew that Joshua's family wasn't exactly well off and warned him not to follow them. The woman said to Joshua, "Your mother may not have been strong, but she tried her best to keep you away from these people." Joshua responded, "I'm fine. Thank you for attending the funeral. But you shouldn't say that here." The neighbors, seeing his response, didn't say anything further and turned to leave. For Joshua, his grandmother's house was the last family he had. Although he knew they were involved in bad things, he chose to stay with family. What happened next, however, turned Joshua's world upside down. During dinner, Craig made a snide comment about Joshua's girlfriend. "If you can use your mouth, I'll give you $100. Nikki, not wanting to spoil the mood, reluctantly complied. Even though Craig's behavior became increasingly outrageous, Joshua didn't dare say anything, only advising his girlfriend.
You really don't have to do this, Nikki.
Shut up, man. That's loser talk.
In the Cody family, the strongest person has the power to speak. Even though Joshua had just arrived, he was furious but could only endure, not daring to defy his uncles. It wasn't over yet. After dinner, Craig did drugs in front of everyone and asked Nikki, "How about you do some?" Nikki replied, "Thanks, I'm fine with just smoking cigarettes." Craig didn't force her, but made Deran sit beside and fetch cigarettes for Nikki. Not long after, Andrew saw Joshua and Nikki sleeping soundly on the couch. He stood up, walked over to Nikki, and carried her into Joshua's room, but Joshua was still awake. Andrew saw Joshua follow him and said, "The girl is really pretty," before leaving. While Joshua was showering, Andrew came to find him again, wanting to take him out for some training. He didn't want any weakling in the house, but Joshua lacked experience. The first time he tried stealing a bike, he was caught red-handed. Andrew saw Joshua getting beaten and not knowing how to fight back. Annoyed, he grabbed an iron rod and went to deal with the bike owner, hitting him relentlessly, then took the ID card from the man's pocket and threatened him, saying if he called the police, he would take revenge on his family. After returning home, Janine saw the bruises on Joshua's face and yelled at Andrew, telling him not to take Joshua out again without her permission.
I'll not do that again. Not without asking me.
Joshua stared at Andrew as if warning him not to bully Janine. Andrew angrily grabbed Joshua by the neck, but Janine didn't stop him. Andrew wasn't being malicious, part of it was to help Joshua grow, and part of it was to vent his own frustration, as Andrew had been forced by Janine to do bad things since he was 6 years old. Fortunately, Joshua was stubborn, and even though he was in pain, he didn't beg for mercy. Only then did Andrew acknowledge this grandson. Although Joshua appeared calm on the outside, he was deeply afraid inside. When Janine tried to comfort him, he pushed her hand away, then rode his bike out. He knew he had no emotional bond with these uncles. If he made them angry, he was sure they would kill him. So, he wanted to leave, to get away from Janine and these scary uncles. He rummaged through his mother's belongings, trying to find any information about his real father, but he didn't even know his father's name, let alone find him. After crying for a while, Joshua reluctantly rode back home, just in time to run into the thug who sold drugs to his mother. The thug came to demand money, and when he insulted his mother, Joshua couldn't hold back his anger.
She's dead, asshole!
The thug begged for mercy, and Joshua, regaining his composure, decided to let him go. He took the thug's gun and tucked it into his waistband for protection, just in case his uncles got out of hand. Meanwhile, Barry, Craig, and Deran began their operation. They drove into a watch shop and stole all the expensive watches. Afterward, they made their escape through the back, regrouped with Deran, and left the scene. Unfortunately, they ran into a police patrol in an alley. While fleeing, they accidentally killed one of the officers. The other cop immediately opened fire, hitting Craig in the back. The next morning, Joshua went to the river and threw his mother's phone into the water, bidding farewell to the past. Then he rode his bike back to his grandmother's house, determined to prove himself through strength. But when he entered the living room, he saw his uncles tending to their wounds. At that moment, there was no fear in his eyes, only the determination to become strong. When Joshua entered the bathroom, he discovered Deran's strange habit. He quickly turned around and acted as though he hadn't seen anything. Deran, noticing this, quickly adjusted his pants, beat up the man, and accused him of stealing his money, calling Joshua to help him deal with the man in order to cover up his own peculiar behavior. After going outside, Deran explained what happened earlier. Joshua didn't say anything and quickly changed the subject, telling Deran that Janine needed him and asked him to go back. After saying that, Joshua rode his bike home. Seeing this, Deran suggested Joshua put his bike in the car and go back together, but Joshua didn't want to cause trouble, so he declined Deran's offer. Deran became angry when Joshua refused to listen, fearing he might speak out of turn, so he honked the horn behind him and told him to stop. But instead of stopping, Joshua turned into a park to avoid him, which only made Deran furious. Just when Joshua thought he had lost Deran, Deran came out of a side street, still shouting for him to stop. Joshua, scared, turned around and pedaled faster, afraid Deran would kill him because of what happened earlier. In the end, Joshua panicked and fell off his bike. Deran saw this and stopped, telling him they would talk when they got home, then drove away. Later that evening, Deran excitedly said he wanted to compete with Joshua. Joshua didn't dare refuse and reluctantly agreed. The two grabbed dumbbells and jumped into the pool, sinking to the bottom. Deran looked at Joshua with a malicious gaze. Joshua could no longer hold his breath and released the dumbbells to swim up, but Deran grabbed his leg and pulled him back down. Joshua struggled with all his might to escape, but couldn't. After a while, Deran finally let him go. It was clear this was a warning from Deran. If Joshua dared to speak about this morning, he would find a way to kill him. The next morning, Janine called a meeting with everyone. Their robbery of the watches had killed a police officer, making the situation extremely serious. To ensure safety, Janine decided to destroy the evidence and declared that all operations would stop, and there would be no more risks. This decision upset the cousins. The expensive watches they had risked their lives to steal were now going to waste, but Janine, being very cautious, overruled them. She didn't want her children to have money but no life to spend it. Later, Janine and Barry went to a factory where they had the employees throw the watches into a furnace to destroy them. Afterward, Janine, alone, went to a storage facility and locked the watches in a safe. Indeed, the older you get, the more cunning you become. Janine's actions were understandable, considering her sons spent everything they earned without saving. Soon enough, their money ran out, and they had no choice but to secretly go behind Janine's back to find a way to make some money. That day, Andrew took Joshua out to broaden his horizons and dragged Deran along to rob a safe in a factory office. They went to the side of the office, using a hammer to break the wall. Once inside, they used tools to lift the safe. At that point, Deran saw someone coming and quickly told Andrew to retreat. Andrew, knowing there was still enough time, didn't plan to leave and calmly pushed the safe to the cart. However, when they tried to push the safe away, they realized it was too large, and they had to cut the metal pillar inside to move it. The pillar was full of wires, and Deran was afraid that using a power saw to cut it would electrocute them, so he hesitated and ran away. At this moment, Joshua grabbed the power saw, cut through the electric pole and wires, and helped Andrew move the safe. Afterward, Andrew cracked open the safe, took some cash, and discussed with Joshua that they would split the money, leaving a portion for the coward Deran. After this, Andrew began to respect Joshua more and silently accepted him as part of the family, paying more attention to him. Joshua also began to solidify his position in the Cody family. However, an upcoming event would once again push him to the brink. The teacher, filled with the essence of femininity, suddenly expressed her feelings towards him. Her gentle and alluring manner made it impossible for anyone to resist. Joshua slowly lost himself. Joshua looked her up and down. He knew what she was planning, because in the eyes of the students, she was always upright and strict. So when faced with her overt invitation, Joshua was a bit confused, but he didn't refuse. That evening, when Joshua arrived at the teacher's house, she offered him a bottle of wine and asked him to sit down and talk for a while. After a while, both of them were a little tipsy. Being alone in a room together made Joshua think a lot, but he wasn't sure what the teacher meant in that regard. It wasn't until her gaze grew more suggestive that she placed her hand on Joshua's thigh, causing his heart to race. He didn't know what to do. Seeing his hesitation, she withdrew her hand in disappointment and took a large gulp from the wine bottle.
I should probably get going.
In reality, many young men had fantasized about getting close to their teacher, but when the moment actually came, they felt embarrassed. So, the next evening, Joshua went to the teacher's house again. As soon as he entered, she kissed him passionately, but quickly pushed him away. It was clear that she had intentionally seduced him before, and now that she had gotten what she wanted, she was playing a game of bait and starve. There was definitely some scheme behind this. Sure enough, the next afternoon, the teacher met with a police officer named Pamela by the lake. It turned out that the teacher had secretly bought illegal drugs and was caught by Pamela. Normally, she would be arrested and face a 20-year prison sentence. Pamela gave the teacher a chance to reduce her sentence. She would have to intentionally seduce Joshua. If necessary, she could offer herself to extract evidence of Cody family's crimes, but playing with the emotions of a student made her feel extremely guilty. No matter how much Pamela tried to persuade her, she didn't want to continue cooperating with the police. With no other options, Pamela found another way to break the case. She gave the teacher a reason, saying that everyone in the Cody family was cruel. If she truly cared for her student, she had to immediately rescue Joshua from that place. At the same time, Joshua's family began a new series of actions, planning to steal a large sum of money from a military base. They had such audacity because Joshua's girlfriend's father was a senior manager there. Since Joshua's girlfriend, Nikki, often stayed overnight at his house, her father was furious. He came to Joshua's house to vent his anger. In response, Janine's first action was to say that she knew nothing about the situation and apologized to Nikki's father. She also invited his family to dinner at their house. Nikki's father, seeing Janine's sincerity and knowing that his daughter liked Joshua, agreed because sooner or later, they would become in-laws. However, Nikki's father was a show-off. While eating, he boasted about counting hundreds of thousands of dollars every day, trying to show how much work he had and how stressful it was. Barry, sensing an opportunity, quickly struck up a conversation with Nikki's father, talking about some of his hobbies. After that, they probed information from Nikki and learned that her father had failed 3 times to get promoted and was somewhat dissatisfied with the system in his department. Barry was secretly pleased. That's why he frequently invited Nikki's father out for drinks, flattering him. Soon, they became close friends. During this time, Barry often probed Nikki's father to see if he was willing to do something reckless, like seeking revenge on his boss for failing to get promoted 3 times. Nikki's father understood the implication of Barry's words, and after thinking for a while, he gave an answer. I could do things like altering their records. Then steal all the money. Barry asked further. Will they be angry? Nikki's father replied. Of course. Money can even control the devil. Nikki's father's words carried a lot of hidden meaning. It meant that if he could gain enough from it, he would be willing to take the risk and cooperate with Barry. Of course, Barry couldn't trust Nikki's father just on these words alone. So, Barry did more to probe him, for example, asking him how to avoid taxes and reduce the tax burden, and then slipping an envelope to him as a thank you, to see if he would accept the money. Sure enough, Nikki's father only pretended to hesitate a little before accepting the envelope. So that evening, Barry went to meet Nikki's father alone and directly revealed his plan. At first, Nikki's father was adamant that he wouldn't engage in anything illegal, but Barry kept convincing him. You need the money, this is a great opportunity. It will change your life. Work with us, and we'll make a big score. After learning about this, Joshua hoped his girlfriend's family wouldn't get dragged into Barry's schemes, so he immediately went to see Nikki and, to protect her, suggested that they break up so she could stay away from his family and stop coming to find him. Later, Joshua went to talk to Janine and told her that Nikki had broken up with him. He wanted to use this as a way to distance the two families and prevent them from working together. However, Joshua didn't expect that on his way back home, Nikki would run into Barry. After hearing that Joshua had broken up with Nikki, Barry immediately called Joshua to the beach to threaten him. But Joshua wasn't afraid and warned Barry to stay away from Nikki's family. Barry, enraged, said, "Are you teaching me how to do my job? Who do you think you are? You should be grateful that you're still standing here talking to me. You're really lucky." This sense of helplessness made Joshua extremely uncomfortable. He didn't know what to do and didn't want to go home, so in the evening, he went to knock on his teacher's door, wanting to play a game with her to ease his frustration. After being dumped by her boyfriend, Nikki saw her ex-boyfriend showing intimate gestures with the teacher. To take revenge on Joshua, she started dating his uncle and even slept with him. Afterward, she came to see Joshua with a provocative look and said, "My uncle and I just had a quickie. I just wanted to let you know. If you see me at your house, don't be surprised." But she didn't know that Joshua broke up with her to protect her. Moreover, the relationship between Joshua and the teacher wasn't what Nikki thought. In fact, that day Joshua was negotiating with the teacher. She was an informant placed by the police close to Joshua, and she had approached him to gather evidence about the Cody family's crimes. But playing with a student's emotions like this made her feel extremely guilty. So, in the end, she confessed everything to Joshua. She told Joshua that she was arrested by the police for buying illegal drugs. If she could get useful evidence from him, she would have her 15-year prison sentence reduced. Therefore, she hoped Joshua could cooperate with the police.
You don't know them. They find out that I talk to the cops. No idea what they'll do to me.
After saying this, Joshua left. Coincidentally, Nikki, who was nearby, saw this scene, which led her to date and sleep with Joshua's uncle. The misunderstanding and betrayal from his girlfriend made Joshua feel completely hopeless. He went to the teacher, crying, hoping for comfort, and said that everything good about him had been destroyed by his uncles. Seeing this, the teacher knew the opportunity had come. She immediately arranged for Joshua to meet Pamela. Faced with Pamela's advice, Joshua hesitated. Even though he lived in fear every day, worried that one day his uncle might kill him, he still didn't want to betray his family. Pamela, seeing Joshua hesitate, decided to tempt him with a little sweetness. So, Pamela called the teacher out and told her to offer herself to Joshua under the guise of love to probe him.
That you love him.
Well, he's not gonna believe that.
He is a teenage boy. He'll believe whatever you tell him.
Although the teacher didn't want to do this, to reduce her 15-year prison sentence, she had no choice but to follow Pamela's instructions. The next day, Pamela came to meet Joshua again. With the help of the sweet words from the teacher, Joshua finally agreed to cooperate with the police, hoping to bring down the Cody family once and for all. Pamela then went to Barry's wife, revealing to her a long-buried secret. Janine killed her father. Although she was very angry upon hearing this news, she truly could not betray her husband. She wanted to take her daughter and leave. When she returned home, Barry's wife packed a suitcase to prepare to take her daughter away. Although she could not betray her husband, it did not mean she could forgive Janine for what she had done. After packing, she took her daughter to Janine's house, pretending to visit her, then secretly went to the back of the house, moved the washing machine, and took some of the money that Janine had hidden there. Meanwhile, Janine was in the living room playing with her granddaughter. She overheard her granddaughter talking about the mother and the police meeting. Janine, thinking Barry's wife was betraying the family, sent Andrew to kill her. At first, Andrew didn't believe Barry's wife had betrayed the family, but he quickly discovered the packed suitcase. Barry's wife, realizing her secret was out, feared Andrew would stop her from leaving, so she used her emotions to seduce him. She said she wanted to run away with Andrew to another place and start a new life. After saying this, she made a move on Andrew. Although Andrew didn't want to kill her, for the safety of the family, he had no choice but to act. Afterward, Andrew dragged the body to a deserted place to bury it, but when he looked at the child in the car, he couldn't bring himself to do it. This child was officially Barry's daughter, but in reality, she was his and Barry's wife's child. The next morning, Nikki's father came to the Cody house, deciding to carry out the military base robbery plan. After everything was prepared, they dressed in blue outfits and got ready for action. First, they went to a training area next to the military base, pretending to be there for fun. Then, while no one was looking, they snuck behind the mountain to the back entrance of the base, disguised as soldiers, waiting there. Soon after, someone threw them a key. Once inside, the four of them clearly divided the tasks. 3 of Barry's group went along the ventilation ducts into the storage room while Deran stayed outside to keep watch. Once inside the storage room, Barry took a key from his pocket and opened the metal door to the vault containing money. They had never seen so much money in their lives. Although they wanted to take all the money, they knew it was impossible, so they only took part of the money from the middle, replacing it with fake money and peeling the seals off the real bills to put on the fake ones. Meanwhile, Deran, guarding outside, saw someone approaching the vault and immediately used the walkie-talkie to alert the others inside. Barry's group hid behind a chest, ready to fight at any moment. Fortunately, the soldiers who entered the vault were not very observant and didn't notice the missing money from the middle. After the soldiers left, they quickly used the fake money to fill the gap, then used a heat gun to seal the bags. Next, they placed the money in bags with trackers, put them into oil barrels, and marked them. Once everything was done, they returned, changed back into their original outfits, and went back to the training area. When Janine saw that her children had safely returned, her anxious heart calmed down. Now, they just had to wait for the oil barrels to be transported out. Not long after, they saw on the iPad that the oil barrels were moving. After using the tracker to find the target, they waited for the truck to stop so the driver could go to the bathroom. They sneaked into the truck and took the money, but when they took the money back, Joshua went alone to meet Janine and said to her, "Do you have a place to hide this money? 2 cops are waiting for me to send a message. I think they've surrounded the house by now." A while later, many police officers surrounded the Cody house. Everyone calmly raised their hands and cooperated with the police to search the house, but after searching for half a day, they still couldn't find the money. Pamela was furious, feeling like she had just been played. She couldn't understand why Joshua changed his mind midway. At this point, Joshua said to her, "It's in a small corner. When I was a kid, I sat there playing. At that time, you came to check if my mother was using opium. She cried and begged you to leave. But you still gave her money to buy opium. Just because you wanted to achieve your goal." Although Joshua's mother hated Janine deeply when she was alive, she had never betrayed the Cody family. Therefore, in the end, Joshua decided never to betray his family. Meanwhile, Barry returned home to find his wife wasn't there and her phone went unanswered. He had no choice but to take his daughter to Janine's house and ask her to look after her. Janine, feeling uneasy, pretended to probe Barry's attitude toward his wife, telling him that his wife had stolen money from her. She said that his wife was tired of this bloody life and took the money to leave, wanting to start a new life. But Barry didn't believe her, saying his wife would never abandon their daughter. Seeing this, Janine decided to go all the way. She placed a stack of money on the table. Barry immediately recognized where it came from. This was the money he had given to Andrew's prison friend. During the 3 years Andrew was in prison, this friend had taken care of Andrew and even saved his life multiple times. So, Andrew agreed to join the underworld with him once he was out of prison. However, the Cody family never cooperated with outsiders. After learning of this, Barry took Andrew to meet the prison friend and gave him a sum of money as compensation, but the man was dissatisfied. He wanted to join the Cody family instead. So, the man privately met with Janine, telling her his purpose for visiting and returned the money to her. Janine, not wanting to cooperate with outsiders, kicked him out. To make Andrew's prison friend take the fall, Janine lied, saying that before he left, the man had said he would come back to take revenge. The first person to act was Barry's wife. Andrew, overhearing this, understood Janine's intent and arranged to meet with the prison friend. He tied him up at an abandoned construction site, allowing Barry to vent his anger. When questioned by Barry, the man denied ever meeting his wife, but Barry didn't believe him, continuously beating him. After the ordeal, Barry asked Andrew to help him deal with the situation. Perhaps due to guilt, Andrew didn't kill him, but instead threw him in front of a hospital, stuffing a stack of money into his pocket before leaving. After Nikki and Joshua's uncle started dating, the two of them would often awkwardly run into each other at home. Meanwhile, Joshua's hatred for the family began to grow. He could be seen holding the gun that Janine gave him, glaring at the people outside with eyes full of hatred. That's the full summary of Animal Kingdom Season 1. Do you want us to make Season 2? If so, leave a comment saying Season 2 below to let us know. If enough people want to see it, we'll definitely continue. Thank you for following us, goodbye, and see you again.